Why story points for outcome-based pricing? And just to go into a little bit more detail there on what we're doing in that regard. Well, it's first helpful to do a quick background on story points. And different organizations do this a little bit differently. Some use like just a simple definition of a small, medium, and large task. Frankly, that's not that different from using different point values. But either way, whether you use small, medium, large, extra large, whether you use a Fibonacci sequence that runs, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 on up from there, it's generally agreed that those small tasks are relatively trivial things, little changes on the UI, that sort of thing. At the next level, you have sort of, let's say, that medium task, which is maybe creating a simple API or modifying one, maybe similar modifications, editing a form, changing validations, something like that, on the user interface. And then you start to get into more complex tasks where it might be not just updating a bit of the UI or a bit of an API, but the UI changes, the associated API changes, and then the associated backend database changes and logical changes, that create an entire vertical feature, bundled together. Maybe that's a simple feature, but it's all the pieces encompassed within. That might be, a larger task. And of course, if each of those changes is itself, like it's a complex UI, a complex API, and a complex database change, well, that may be broken out, of course, into three-point tasks or something like that. But at any rate, that's the notion of story pointing. And while imperfect, it's a better measure, or it's proven over time perhaps to be a better measure than guesstimates of hours. And so, it is used in a widespread way across the industry. It has been. One of the challenges, though, is that it's done inconsistently because it's done by humans. So using AI to automate the process, and so this is where you get into the agentic aspect of having the AI agent actually come in, look at all the tasks, look at the context for even the source code, and then decide how difficult the tasks are. That improves that process and gets at minimum gets you unbiased estimates, because the AI has no skin in the game. It's not the one getting paid for doing or not doing the work. And so you get unbiased estimates. They're not, management might want to systematically say that the points are easier than expected. Engineers might want to inflate them to make it look like they're doing a good job. So you don't get either of those forces at play. But the real benefit of a model where monthly pay or, periodic pay for an engineer, let's say in this case, is tied to output like story points, is that, well, from a client's perspective, if only half the allotted work was finished, well, then only half the invoice gets paid. So you've got a direct relationship in terms of cost and outcome, which from a client perspective works out great. And you might think, well, that sucks for the engineer. Who would ever do that? That's a horrible, that is basically a horrible way to underpay the engineers. Actually, it's precisely the opposite, because for the first time, when you're being measured by output and not by hours, well, if you work faster, you're rewarded for it. If you work more efficiently, you're rewarded for it. And so what we're seeing is that the best engineers could actually earn 50% more on a dollars per hour basis because they simply work faster anyway. And so now that actually shines through. In most organizations, when you're not compensated for your output, there are variations in compensation, to be sure. And over the course of a career, maybe you get promoted or you ascend as a result of that. But that's not guaranteed in the here and now. Whereas in this model, you actually directly get that benefit. And so that's why we actually think that there's a win-win here. The best, most productive engineers would be attracted to a model in which they get paid based on their output as opposed to based on their hours. Now, of course, you have to control for quality and make sure that folks aren't just chucking AI slop over the wall, so to speak. But that risk exists today, even in an hourly system. Folks who are just trying to skirt around the edges can do that anyway. So those risks remain. It doesn't solve for that. But again, by compensating the best folks for their output, we actually think that helps to select those who are the highest productivity and then also guarantee the outcome to the client.